Hey there. Be honest, when you look at your bank account and see a few thousand sitting there, doesn't it feel like it's your money? Spoiler, it's not. Well, technically it is, until the system decides it's not. Okay, picture this. Your friend Bob is just an average guy. Bob just got his paycheck. He's happy. And like any responsible adult, he puts a little aside for a rainy day. He checks his balance. Nice, $1,000. I'm doing great. But here's the problem. When Bob puts his money in the bank, he no longer owns it. He's just lending it to the bank. Yeah, seriously. When you deposit money, the bank takes it and immediately goes off to have a good time with it. It lends it out, invests it, buys bonds, or plays in something called derivatives, which is basically a fancy casino with a better PR team. So now your money is out there living its own life, somewhere in loans, somewhere in government debt, somewhere in a spreadsheet called liabilities. And what do you have? A number, a promise. You see $1,000 on your screen. But what it really means is the bank owes you $1,000. And that's where it gets interesting. Because if everyone decided to withdraw their money at once, the bank would go, yeah, about that. We don't have it. That moment has a fancy name, a liquidity crisis. But really it means the money's gone. Good luck. So if Bob doesn't own his money, who does? Let's follow the chain. The bank owns Bob's money. The bank answers to the central bank. And the central bank, that's the strange uncle who can print money out of thin air and somehow still isn't called a scammer. He decides how much money exists in the world. But here's the twist. Even he doesn't create real money, because most money isn't paper. It's just numbers on a screen. 98% of all money exists only as digits in banking databases, meaning it's just computer code. And a computer is basically a polite calculator. So we live in a system where money is a promise and ownership is just trust. Now, Bob's friend Alice works in finance. She tells him, Bob, you know that money is debt, right? Bob freezes. How can it be debt if I earned it? Alice grabs a napkin and starts drawing. The government issues bonds to borrow money from investors. Banks buy those bonds. The central bank prints money to buy those bonds from the banks. That money flows into the economy. Voila! New money appears. But so does new debt, meaning every dollar is someone's liability. And if you add them all up, the entire world owes itself money. At this point, Bob asked the question every sane teenager has asked at least once. So, who do we actually owe? And that's where the magic begins. Because the answer depends on how far down the matrix you want to go. On the surface, we owe the banks. The banks owe the central bank. The central bank owes the government. The government owes the people. And the people owe the banks again. It's a perfect circle, a financial friendship pyramid. Now imagine that at the top of this pyramid sits an invisible club. The ones who actually decide who gets the next trillion. They're not politicians, not presidents, not even bank CEOs. They're investors, financial giants, people who control where the world's money flows. Companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they own shares in every major bank, every oil company, every tech giant, which basically means they own everything that moves. Funny, right? Everyone argues over who owns the world. But in reality, it's controlled by a handful of investment firms that don't even have faces. They don't print the money, they just control where it goes. Bob squints and asks, so wait, if I have a bank account and they own part of the bank, does that mean they own part of my money? Alice smiles. Not exactly. They own part of your world. And that's when it hits Bob. Money isn't paper. It's not even digital. It's power. And whoever controls the flow controls the planet. But the funniest part, even those who own everything don't really own anything. Because if trust disappears, well, so does money. With one click, one panic, one breaking headline. And then the question nobody wants to face emerges. If money isn't really ours and it doesn't exist without belief, then maybe everything we call ownership is just a very well-organized illusion. Because that's the secret no one wants to admit. The entire global economy runs on belief. Not gold, not oil, not even technology. Just belief. Belief that a number in your account means value. Belief that governments will pay back what they borrow. Belief that when you hand someone a piece of paper with Benjamin Franklin's face on it, they'll give you food in return. But who benefits most from that belief? Not you. Not me. The people who understand how to use belief to create wealth out of thin air. Those investment giants, the invisible club, play a different game. They don't hoard cash. They own claims on things that generate cash. Stocks, bonds, real estate, even water rights. When you buy an iPhone, they earn. When you fill up your car, they earn. When governments print money to stimulate the economy, they earn again because their assets go up. It's like they designed the game board and everyone else is playing checkers on it. Now you might think, okay, but where do they get the money to buy all that? The answer is leverage. Leverage means using borrowed money to buy more things. But when you're one of the biggest players, you don't borrow like normal people. You create systems that lend to yourself. Imagine Bob wants to buy a house. He needs a mortgage. The bank checks his income, debt, everything. Now imagine BlackRock wants to buy 10,000 houses. Do they get a credit check? Number. The market just gives them the money. It's cheap. Because everyone believes they'll make it back. And there it is again. Belief as collateral. When you control billions, risk becomes optional. You can lose millions and still get richer. Because when you own the system, you make the rules. Most people think countries are independent players. But they're all connected by the same financial bloodstream, the global bond market. Governments borrow by selling bonds. Investors buy them. The government gets cash, investors get interest. And if a government can't pay back, no problem. They just print more money. But printing money quietly steals value from everyone who already has it. That's inflation, a polite word for your savings are shrinking. When central banks print, ordinary people lose purchasing power and the ultra-rich gain asset power. Their wealth is tied to things that rise with inflation, stocks, real estate, commodities. It's not a conspiracy. It's just how the game is wired. And the best part, it's all legal. Now, you might say, what if belief fades? When trust breaks, hyperinflation, bank runs, money evaporates. Not disappears, evaporates. Because it was never real. It was a promise. And promises only live as long as people believe them. That's why during crises you see the same pattern. Governments panic, banks freeze, and central banks step in, injecting liquidity, which is just a fancy way of saying, let's print more promises. The world economy is the biggest trust exercise in history. But here's what no one tells you. You don't have to be a billionaire to understand or use this system. You just have to know what it rewards. It doesn't reward saving, it rewards owning. It doesn't reward working harder. It rewards controlling assets that work for you. Every major financial player operates on that principle. They don't keep cash under a mattress, they own streams of income. And as long as those streams keep flowing, they stay on top. Meanwhile, most people play defense and trying to beat a system that was never fair. But even the ultra-rich are trapped. They can't stop playing. The moment they hold cash, the system punishes them too. Their wealth depends on constant movement. Money in motion, belief in motion. That's the irony. The people who seem to own everything are just the most skilled believers. They understand the illusion deeply enough to profit from it. But they still depend on everyone else to believe too. Because if one day the world went, wait, this is all just numbers, isn't it? The illusion would crack. And then, no money, no markets, no global economy. Just people trying to figure out what things are really worth when there's no price tag attached. So maybe the real question isn't who owns the world's money, but who owns the world's belief in money? Because whoever owns that belief owns everything. So in conclusion, money isn't evil or magical or mysterious. It's the language we use to measure trust, value, and control. The system rewards those who speak that language fluently, those who know how to move money, not just earn it. You don't need to join the invisible club. Just stop thinking like a spectator. See money as a tool, not a treasure. Because once you understand who really owns it, you stop playing their game blindly and start playing your own. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.